Lesotho's Prime Minister Thomas Thabane is facing a vote of no confidence, and to make matters worse, the motion is led by his own dissidents. Following a disputed February Elective Conference which saw Professor Nqosa Mahao emerge as deputy leader of the party, the ABC, the new elected administration was met with resistance, whereby the ousted National Elective Committee refused to vacate office and headed to court, citing irregularities during elections. Well, this has led to a power tussle between the new and the old committee, which culminated to eminent motions of a vote of no confidence against the sitting Prime Minister.
But what I can confirm is that I've been informed by the mover and the seconder of the motion that they have nominated my name in that regard, as it is required by law. It is a motion like any other ordinary motion. It's not like a motion which is based on Standing Order number 29, which then we are told that that particular day all business should adjourn and then discuss that particular motion. This one becomes an ordinary motion, and therefore it is my belief that it will be discussed as and when it is appropriate. But what I can tell you as an experience is that the procedures are very clear and the wording is very clear. We have had that in 2017, and now the history it seems to be repeating itself. As you may know, we have had problems. We have had disagreements in the big party, the ABC, in that we have been to the elective conference in February. Even up to now, we are still in trouble. We have had discussions, we have had negotiations, we have had even negotiations when the court was proceeding, when the case was proceeding in court. Next, the members of parliament decided that we should have mediation between two factions. It was further escalated to another level where the leader and the deputy leader met, and ultimately the discussions have not come to fruition even up to now. And we are now informed, we have heard about 2 weeks ago, we have been called in by the Christian Council of Lesotho. Even that process has not yet been finalized.
And finally, what does it say to a sitting Prime Minister, sitting knowing that there is a cloud hanging of a motion of no confidence over it? Is it just business as usual?
Well, I don't know. That question could be answered by him. What I only know is that obviously if there is this kind of arrangement, obviously it should be worrying him, and even ourselves, we are worried. What is going to happen? There will be an issue of security for some individuals. There will be an issue of who will vote with who, and whether the party will actually manage to go through this trying time. But at this point in time, we are saying we'll take anything as it comes, because it is one of the procedures in Parliament, and therefore let us get into it.
There's a likelihood we are going to elections again?
Well, yes, the requirement of the law is that if the Prime Minister has had a vote of no confidence against him and that motion has succeeded, it's either he can be silent for 3 days and not say anything, then automatically the king will take over, or he can actually resign and then hand over to the one who has been nominated as the next Prime Minister, or he can advise the king to call election.
For more on this story, we cross live to our Lesotho Correspondent Rapelang Radebe via Skype. Rapelang, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Lesotho has hardly returned from elections 2 years ago. Why would there be a motion to a vote of no confidence to him?
Well, thank you, Mrs. Mpiwe. A number of things really that has really emerged. Some is merely disgruntled ones who could not get fancy business opportunities. They had some anticipations because of their participation in the elections. And the problem is that when they are not rewarded with positions, they become all disgruntled. But also the problem is that others are crying that the Chinese are taking a much better upper hand and advantage over Lesotho. While some are simply saying there was just too much interference from his young wife, who is said to have an overreach, has unfettered powers to even to some extent fire and hire the ministers. These are internal factions that have really come up and have put the party into such disrepair.
And I understand such a motion rises from his own dissidents. Like, who has actually raised this motion and what's the likelihood of it succeeding?
Absolutely. This mysteriously comes from his own party. You see, having come from the elections, there was a problem that were elected and could not be allowed to get into office. So these are the people who have become a bit disgruntled because they say the people have elected them, but for some reason they are not allowed opportunity to get into office to actually serve. While some are actually saying the old NEC does not want to step down because they have done certain things they do not want to account. But the question was also whether what is the chance of this motion actually succeeding. There was a bit of a test that actually took place where one opposition member was supposed to be suspended, but the opposition and some members of the ruling party came together, cobbled numbers, and actually was able to overcome the government. Now, if this test for anything, it could be a test that maybe there is a reason to worry. There are numbers that could come up for him.
Now, the factions within the All Basotho Congress post the elective conference, are they beyond repair?
It is a problem because if you look at the material of what is going on, they went to elections and they expected that the vote of the people would be respected. But others are just saying there were irregularities and they were not willing to accept the outcome of the elections. This has gone to the courts. The Christian community has come in between. They have tried to intervene, but it looks like there's no solution. I had an interview with the Prime Minister a few weeks ago who actually promised me that things are in order. He's taking care of the situation, but it clearly looks like it's not the case.
Now, we understand that Professor Nqosa Mahao was elected as his deputy leader and a likely successor within the ABC. Was this perhaps a managed transition, or the newly elected committee was just not his preferred one?
Well, it's a university lecturer. I spoke to one university lecturer just before the election conference who said, you see, if you have to understand the politics of the ABC, you just need to study the history of the deputy leaders and draw a parallel. You will see that there is a reluctance that anyone who may be seeming to be likely to take over the ABC, if he's not the preferred candidate, he faces some restrictions or there's reluctance towards accepting him. So, and he said, this is probably going to be the case. If somebody emerges like Professor Mahao and is not the preferred, because there was already some resistance towards him, it might just be a chaos.
So where to from here? I mean, does the king even have a say on this matter? And what about the stability of the country?
It's an interesting one. You see, unless the reforms are completed and effected, the king really remains a ceremonial figure. There are clauses that says he acts if he can act contrary to what the advice of the prime minister says, actually he can be overruled. And the question is whether the stability of the kingdom right now, what is going to happen? If we were to go to elections, do we have enough money? What about the international community? What's going to happen? The confidence, the already fragile economy of the kingdom, if there's going to be elections every 2 years, what should happen? The reforms should take place, they should be effected, and they should come into place. And I think some of these things can be solved and settled once and for all.
And the fact that Mr. Thabane breached the constitution by allowing an unelected individual, that is his wife, to exercise the powers only given to a prime minister by the constitution. And one wonders then why his party didn't call him to order.
Well, actually, he has spoken in some of his parties and said anyone who wishes to interfere between him and his wife, he might just consider retiring and going home because, but some maybe were slightly reluctant to raise matters as such. I think if you could just look back at what happened in Zimbabwe sometimes, the role of the first ladies, maybe this was becoming a problem. Some were clearly not in a position to challenge him onto that point. They've tried to sort some of this in the back benches, but it doesn't seem like it's going to slow down anytime soon.
So does the Senate have a say or a role in his stepping down?
The parliament should actually now decide what happens, but there's already a motion that is to be raised that tomorrow the parliament should be closed until end of September, and that means that motion may face challenges. But we've heard that some of the parliamentarians are adamant that that should not happen. They are going to request that the parliament is extended by a week because, to start with, it has a lot of business. And some of them say they really don't understand why they should go to a break for 3 months, even though there's still a lot of business, especially when it comes to now the motion of vote of no confidence that has just emerged.
I mean, the old NEC had attempted to block Mahao from contesting on the grounds that he was too new and he didn't qualify. Do you also share the same sentiments? Does he have the necessary gravitas to tackle Lesotho politics?
Yeah, it's politics, because if you look at the history of ABC, there are those who actually went into that extent. But it went to the court, it was challenged, and the court actually made a ruling that he's qualified. And the Prime Minister actually, as the leader, accepted him into the party. So it's politics to some extent. Some will say he has not contested even any structures from the locals, and why would he suddenly be catapulted to a position of a deputy leadership? So it's politics. Some will like him, some will not like him, and they will use whatever is available on the book maybe to block him, simply because maybe they prefer a particular candidate.
All right, Rapelang, thank you so much for your time. That was our reporter, Rapelang Radebe, talking to us via Skype from Maseru in Lesotho.